imagine you have a new member coming into your gym. You know nothing about them. So you might pair them up with a trainer, you might ask them a couple of questions for onboarding. But imagine with AI, by having a few data points, so you know their background, maybe what neighborhood they live in, maybe you know their age, right, their fitness level, you could now predictively say, these are the steps you have to take.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. And today I'm in Los Angeles with the founder of Sweatworks, one of the leading organizations in fitness tech, to specifically discuss the subject of artificial intelligence for the fitness industry. Our guest has spent the last 12 months researching the subject and making financial investments into the technology. And he's agreed to share his insights and perspectives on the subject, along with the concepts we could be thinking about. So please enjoy this week's episode of the Escape Your Limits podcast with Mr. Mohammed Iqbal, CEO and founder of Sweatworks. Mo, thank you for joining us today. We're in my hotel room.
Yes, we are.
Interesting place to do an interview, but
yeah, I'm really glad to be back. I mean, I think it was about a year ago, roughly, that we did a podcast on Web3.
Yeah, we were having some conversations about it, and I was admitting I didn't know anything, and so it was a great education for me. And now we've had some conversations about AI, and
that's right.
Another thing I know nothing about, but you've spent quite a bit of time investigating it. Is that a best way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, and this has been, with Web3 at the time, I'd spent about a year, but this is, with AI, it's been about 5 or 6 years. I've been in the category for quite some time, and hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll be well educated.
Right.
Yeah.
And as it relates to Sweatworks, then, what is the what's the relevance to your business? Like, I suppose it's obvious you're in a tech, you're in the world of tech, but
yeah.
why is AI particularly of interest in terms of what you're doing in your regular business?
Yeah, look, I mean, brands typically engage us, brands in our portfolio engage us to help them with innovative, progressive ideas, to help them implement, leading edge or bleeding edge technology. So we're in the business of learning what is new, what is relevant, what could help them achieve their goals. And AI for the last several years has been core to that. So we built expertise internally. There's been a lot of times where we've failed and learned the hard way, and AI is also evolving and changing. We'll get a bit more into that. But that's really how it impacts our businesses. We get retained to build products, in this case, AI-based products and technologies for the brands that we work with.
Right. It seems as though, for me anyway, I've kind of heard AI been around, there's been some products, but it seems to have sort of landed over the last 12 months with things like ChatGPT. That for me, that seems to have kind of brought AI into everybody's conversation and almost like some of their even concerns that people have. But something that I guess I thought was a relatively new thing, there's a much further back history than what I guess most people were aware of. So maybe that's a good place to start, is tell us about the history of AI. When did it start? Who was involved in it, and what was the original purpose?
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes back to your home country in the UK, but AI actually goes back to 1950. A lot of people, to your point, recognize AI or have been more aware of it through ChatGPT, which came out late in 2022. We'll come into that here in a few minutes. But in 1949, so up until 1949, if you think about the world of computing and computers, computers didn't have the ability to store information. So you basically would give it a command, it would execute the command, and that would be it. So computers were processors that did not have the ability to store information. What is core to AI, and this is a fundamental understanding of it, is that you have to store data, right? You always hear about big data, storing data. So in 1950, the first computer, and these were computers of the size of buildings, right, had the ability to start storing some data. So finally, for the first time, not only could it process information, but it could now store some data. And a British math expert, Alan Turing, in 1950, came up with this idea that you could use algorithms to do some sort of predictive output. And it wasn't called artificial intelligence yet. That term was coined about 5 years later, and I'll come back to that. But he came up with this concept to say that, well, if we could store data, if we could identify a pattern, then perhaps we could predict what that output's going to come. And he came up with this theory called the Turing theory, and it is still used today. And what that says is, artificial intelligence is defined by a computer that can output something where you can't tell the difference between whether that output was from a human or from a computer. And you could even, it could be something as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. So if I had that very simple math equation, I don't know whether that output was from a computer or a human, and that is the Turing principle.
And on that, two questions, if I can remember. So the Turing test, you gave one, which is 1 + 1 = 2, which is one example. But is there something that's, I suppose, a little bit more real to what a human would likely to do? Because I guess the only reason I say that is a calculator, I suppose, has been doing things like that for a long time. So is there any sort of other things that are probably more, will land more to sort of explain that principle a little bit better, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I took a fundamentally the lowest example you could do, and it goes progressively higher than that. So there are 7 layers of AI, which will come into here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But I want to move forward 5 years. So in 1956, you might have heard the company, the Rand Corporation. A lot of people might have heard the name, didn't really know what they did, but that's a research and development funded corporation by both public and private entities. And what they did is in Dartmouth, they held a summer internship program, ultimately called AI. So it's called the Dartmouth Summer Intern on Artificial Intelligence. And that conference is where the term AI was first coined as artificial intelligence. They actually built a POC called the logic theory, which was the first true AI-based program. So if you think about where Alan Turing came up with the concept, right, of it, well, they actually created the first AI-based program called the logic theory, in which you're using patterns to kind of think like a human, right? So if this, then that, but really going to multiple data points, not a single point like 1 + 1 = 2, but a lot more complex behavior. And then from that point on till about 1971 or so, there was a lot of research done on AI. There was a lot of models that were built out, but the computing power just wasn't there. So if you think about it, the programming skills, the mathematical equations, the algorithms were already built, but they didn't have the computer power to process. So what happened is people stopped funding it because they were funding all of these grants, both public and private, into AI with very little to show for it. So,
and why was so in order to do some of these calculations, then is there a huge amount of power required to be able to do that? Then, like for simple people like me, explain why that couldn't have happened before then.
The computing processor and computing power to process algorithms just weren't there. So, if you go way back, to process a simple equation might have taken hours. To process a spreadsheet or a formula would have taken hours. Today, it takes seconds. You can do something on your phone, what people used to be able to do in mainframes. And at the time, this is in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, these complex algorithms would take days and months, if at all, to process. And you would have these mega rooms, and there were very few supercomputers available, and that was the issue. And then ultimately needed funding. So if you could imagine government and private organizations funding research, but not much to show for it. So there was a period of excitement after that first conference, but then after that peaked up until the 70s. And after that, there was a cooling off period until the 80s. So
just, again, sorry to kind of go down different routes, but what is processing power then? What was the shift? I don't know, this is not directly AI, but like you used to have these big machines years ago. Now you've got these small machines that does a lot. So what is it in terms of what happens with this computer power, and why did it used to be like really big, and why is it really small? Like what's changed on that front?
So one, there's this principle called Moore's law, which basically states that every 2 years, and this is very general, and people will question it, but it has held true, that every 2 years computing power will double, right? So chips get smaller. So in the same chip for the same amount of power, you could do twice as much effort. Really, it's been technology. It's the ability to make silicone put smaller and smaller chips in one piece of silicone. So that has allowed you to process more and more. And it's taken time because technology, making smaller and smaller transistors, putting more and more chips on one wafer is hard. It's a really hard thing to do.
Introducing the next big thing in functional training, the Escape Barrow, a revolutionary training tool that combines a loaded farmer's carry with a sled push to develop hip, grip, and core strength. Developed in partnership with Pete Holman, inventor of the TRX Rip Trainer and Nautilus Glute Drive, the Escape Barrow can be rolled, pushed, dragged and carried. The Escape Barrow packs a punch with an impressive load capacity of 440 pounds, and with a two-stage galvanized paint covering process, it's also ideal for outdoor use. So head over to escapefitness.com/barrow. That's escapefitness.com/barrow to find out more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
What kind of what goes on those things then? Just because it's almost like it's silicone. Like what's in it? That do you know what?
In its most basic sense, it's zeros and ones. So it's zeros and ones. It's
right.
On and off, and it's. I mean, if you think about it, I'm oversimplifying, but it's really like a light switch.
Okay.
Right, and that creates pathways. So you turn a switch on, you turn a switch off. In its most basic sense, even today, it's zeros and ones that basically dictate a pathway of which way to go. It's yes or no, but it's that times millions and billions that kind of then create an output.
Right. I remember like my dad years ago used to work in a factory and they had these like it was the zeros and ones. We used to write different. I guess, I don't know whether it's like early code, and it used to print off on this printer.
That's right.
And I don't know what they were called. I remember going and seeing them doing this. Like that must have been sort of very early.
Very early. And that would take a long, I mean, look, programming today, most engineers do not code in that anymore. So
right. What's it called?
Today,
what
I
did
don't
it used
recall.
to be called?
No, I don't recall. But those were mainframe computers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are mainframe computers
right.
that you'd basically either, you could even feed it in, right? Even if you think about it, those old computers before the 50s, you would have to feed in data that were basically punched in holes.
In holes, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it would know what to process, but it couldn't store any data. So in a lot of ways, the storage was that piece of paper.
Right. So part of it has been then the development of some of these chips, and then the other part is figuring out how to program the chips. Is that?
That's right. So it's the development of the chips, which are still advancing. But look, if we fast forward to today, the processing power of chips, especially led by companies like NVIDIA, with these GPUs that they're now processing, which is where a lot of the AI processing happens, is far ahead of capabilities. So if you think about
the chips have moved quicker than the.
It has shifted. So, if you think about where we were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the algorithms, the software, was ahead of the abilities of the computers. But today, the processing power is ahead of where the software is.
So what does that, again, what's the relevance of that? What does that kind of mean in things that you get your head around? Like, does that mean that there's so much opportunity to kind of do way more than what we're able to do?
That's it. That right now, we are at the beginnings of what AI can do. Right, and we're going to talk about the different types of AI here shortly, but that means that there is a lot more room for AI to grow over the next couple of decades.
Right. So one other question: algorithms. Like it's something that's talked about a lot. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong or explain your version, but from what I understand, algorithms are kind of assumptions that if you're trying to get from one place to another and you can't actually get there directly with a direct connection, you kind of make these assumptions and it kind of creates the best way to explain how to get from one point to another, accepting that quite a few bits in the step are missing, but it kind of it fills in the gaps itself. Is that?
That's very accurate. So in artificial intelligence, there are 4 key concepts that are important to recognize. The first one is...
Do you want to go through those concepts now? Is that a good time?
I think it might be a great time because it relates to algorithms, right? So first is, how do you categorize data that's coming in? Second is classifying that data. The third is machine learning, which I'll dig into deeper. And then the fourth is filtering it. So an algorithm is really focused on the machine learning and the filtering. So if you think about the first point of data, which is how do you categorize data coming in? When data comes in, you have to identify to say this data means X. So in other words, this data could tell you someone's gender, right? Then how is it going to classify? So you know it's male or female or other. And then you might say this classification is under gender. And then you would apply a learning model. So let's just say the program is meant to say with multiple, so AI works with multiple data sets. So you might want to say, gender types and preferences. So what kind of shoes do people like to buy? And you could classify the shoe purchases that people make along with the type of gender or lack of gender that they claim against, and build an algorithm around it. And then through a large data set, you could then start to predict and say that if someone is a male in their 40s that lives in Los Angeles, they will most likely make this purchase.
Okay. And making it relevant.
And that's the fourth part, which is the filtering.
Okay. And so give an example with fitness community, like what would be an example of an algorithm in our space that we're in then?
I think a simple concept that most people understand is heart rate-based training.
Okay.
So we could apply, and we have applied AI towards heart rate-based training. And the way that would work is, we have these general heart rate zone charts. That's one set of data saying that people in this age, in this fitness level, these should be your customized, your heart rate zones, right? And most people can recognize that. But what people, I think, struggle to understand is how do you personalize them? So you use other metrics like your VO2 max maybe as one, you put in your max heart rate as the other. But with AI, we can collect real-time data. So instead of us just guessing and going off of a chart and saying, if your age is this, or if your VO2 max is this is your max heart rate, and then we're going to figure out your zones. One, those zones are predefined sets of standards. So what is really zone 1? What is really zone 2? And why is it based off a table? Why is it not personalized for me? What AI can do is by us capturing different data sets, we could capture data points like your gender, your age, your fitness level, the type of workout that you do, your muscle mass, your length of activity, the type of muscle that you have, slow twitch versus fast twitch, and then predict heart rate zones for you accurately. Right? So instead of you just trying to guess what your max heart rate is, which is a very hard thing to do, right? If you've done a VO2 max test or trying to going after your max heart, most people can't actually do that. They can't actually achieve that. So in most cases, it's a guess. But we can use AI to make that guess a lot more accurate.
Right.
So that's one example, is using AI to do that. The second thing is in predictive behavior. So for instance, if you say, this is my goal today. I weigh 200 pounds. I want to lose 25 pounds in 4 weeks. Is that possible? You could put together a program on nutrition and exercise and maybe supplementation to help to get there. But AI could help us be a lot more accurate about predicting not only what those inputs should be, but what the outputs need to be as well. So for example, you could say, okay, by having these inputs, if I change my diet like this, if I take this supplement, if I work out like this, I can expect this output. That's one way. Or you could start with the output first, and you can use AI to say, well, I'm 200 pounds, I want to lose 25 pounds in 4 weeks, what do I do? And it might tell you that that's not possible, or it might tell you that, sure, you could achieve it, but you've got to take these drastic measures.
And so with AI then, is there like an algorithm? So let's say before AI, you want to lose weight, and you kind of put these algorithms together that give you a bit of a pathway and say, okay, look, if you do this is kind of what happens, and you get a certain amount of inputs from your heart rate, etc., and it tells you what to do. With AI, then, if you couple that with it, does it then take information that it knows and combines that with an algorithm and sort of looks at adjusts the inputs to sort of match a standard algorithm with saying, well, yeah, this is the algorithm, but we're kind of seeing it slightly changing over here, so we're correcting it. Is it?
Okay, you're touching on a really good point, which is machine learning.
Oh, that's okay. That's another part, right?
So what you've basically said, if I'm understanding your question correctly, is can the algorithm evolve over time? And that is exactly what AI is about.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the concept of machine learning. In that, yes. So where AI is going to recommend you something, but it's also going to be learning from what your output is, and then it might adjust that. It might adjust that algorithm. So it's a constantly learning model.
Right.
The more data you put in, right, and we use terms like big data, but the more data you could input, the more predictive the more accurate that prediction is going to be over time.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So there are a lot of applications for this. So we just talked about, maybe weight. We talked about looking at preferences, but in fitness, I think it could really be a tool in helping you achieve your goals. If you think about how fitness came to be the modern era of fitness, we talked about Joe Weider last night, kind of really ushered in the modern era of fitness, at least here in America and in the West. And what people were attracted to is almost the simplification of programming, right? People really attracted to the idea of splits. Maybe I do upper body twice a week, I do lower body twice a week, maybe I do some cardio mixed in there, take a couple of rest days, and everyone had a split that they really liked and say, well, this split works for me for bulking, this split works for me for cutting. And it worked. In general, it actually worked and people saw results. What AI enables you to do is to now say, well, how can you really get the maximum efficiency out of that? Not that these programs don't work, but they are a pretty broad application of a training principle. Mm-hmm. But what if for someone, they get maximum results instead of doing a 2-a-day split, they're doing one body part a week? Where AI could help know that by knowing what kind of body do we have, how does our body respond to it, and it could make recommendations along the way. And the same is true for supplementations as well. AI could predictively tell you that your body's going to be sensitive to this, right, before you've even taken it. And that's the benefit of AI. Instead of you having to put on a CGM, like you and I have both have tried, and anecdotally look at our spikes that are happening, AI could help predict that by looking at other inputs. Mm. So for example, we could say, like I recently found out that I'm sensitive to oatmeal, from doing levels, which I think something you've tried as well. But with AI, even though I might not have had to eat oatmeal to look at that, it could predictively say that because of these other inputs, based off of looking at the big sets of data that we've collected, you are going to be sensitive to oatmeal. And that is something that really wasn't available to us before.
Wow. So the key concepts then, just to summarize, the four key concepts, is that what?
That's correct. There's 4 key concepts.
So just have we gone through 4 of them?
We've gone through all 4 of them. I mean,
so just summarize then.
So the first one is, really putting the data into different buckets, right? So what type of data are you collecting in? The second is classifying that data, right? What is the data? So you have the buckets and identifying what it is. The third is the machine learning algorithm. That's what you kind of referenced, which is how does the algorithm learn over time? How does it take the data and adjust the model? And the fourth is filtering. And that's saying, okay, well, my inputs are going to be this, and what is the output? Or saying, I have the output, tell me what the inputs should be. Mm-hmm. And that's the filters. Those are the 4 core principles of AI. So with that, AI has, and again, there's people will debate this, but generally 7 different branches from within that. So you could take that and have 7 different branches or applications of AI. And there's some that I have here which are common, but computer vision is one that has been around and people are aware of it through things like Tesla, and in fitness through, like Tempo just released an AI-based application using computer vision. Fuzzy logic is another one that people have.
What's fuzzy logic?
Fuzzy logic is where you could just put in a couple of terms and it can complete the rest for you. It's a way to search. So instead of you being, a simple way of it is spelling. So you could put in Mohammed, there's multiple ways to spell Mohammed, but I could put it with 1 M. Well, it will find all the Mohammeds, whether it's Mohammed with 2 M's, Mohammed with an E, Mohammed with an A. That's
is this
fuzzy
how,
logic.
Like some of the search would that be Google?
That's
for example?
exactly how that works. It's fuzzy logic.
Right.
Then you have an expert system is another application of AI. And that is what you see in chatbots today. So you might put in a request and say, well, I just had a collision with my car. And the system will say, okay, that means you need to call someone. I need to get more data from you. Like, what is your insurance number? Give me some details. So that's what chatbot uses. The fourth is in robot automations. If you might have seen this in factories, right? So think about car factories, plants that use robots. So that's an application of AI. The fifth is machine learning, and that's where we have an algorithm where the model continues to learn over time. The sixth is deep learning, and that is what, we'll get into that. That's the Terminator kind of world. And the seventh is natural language processing, and that is Siri or Alexa, and some of the more common applications of AI that we see today. So AI.
And on that, Siri and Alexa. So what are they generally doing? Like, how would you explain what Siri and Alexa are doing, so we can understand what's going on there?
Yeah, and we'll get into this here in a little bit, because there are also different types of AI as well. So Siri and Alexa use something called narrow AI, and that is essentially where you could ask it something, and it could then feed something back using your language. So it is again using all of the models of AI that we talked about, right? How does it input the data? How does it filter the data to then find out what it is that you're asking for, and how can it return the answer that you're looking for?
And because when I was looking at ChatGPT, and they've got different levels, and it was like some of it's to do with the level of information it's been given. Are some of these AI systems just purely limited to the boundaries of what's been the inputs that you say, or are some of them have the ability to almost say, okay, well, this is how much I know, now I'm going to sort of learn beyond that? Like, are they able to just take on this life of their own in some way? Or is that what you was going to chat about?
Yeah, I was going to go into that. So, right. but we can get into that now. So there are three general capabilities of AI, and you've just touched on two of them. So the first one is called narrow intelligence. So that is called artificial narrow intelligence. That is what Siri uses. Now, ChatGPT is called artificial general intelligence. And the third is super intelligence. So let's start with narrow intelligence first. Narrow intelligence is like facial recognition. If you go to the airport, you have global entry, it recognizes your face, it authenticates that it's Matthew, and the system lets you in. Siri, Alexa, Google Home, these are all narrow intelligence, right? Then you've got general intelligence. General intelligence is something that is on par with human reasoning. So that's what people call general intelligence. So think about Tesla Autopilot. You're going to have a car that's going to try to drive itself as good as a human, theoretically. You're going to ask ChatGPT a question that's going to give you a response as good as someone researching it, as good as you doing a search yourself. So that is general. And then you've got super intelligence. And I think this is where AI capabilities go beyond the human brain. Now, I think that is about 100 years away. For us to get 100 years away,
wow.
and here's why. There's a lot of papers written on this. Today, the most powerful supercomputer in the world, again, it's a point of debate depending on who you ask for, but most people agree there's a supercomputer in China that is right now the most powerful supercomputer in the world today, and they always have these races. So I'm sure Taiwan or the US might have one next year that beats that. But from a computational perspective right now, it could do about 250 billion computations per second right now. That is that. The human brain could do 4 times that today. So our brain is more capable of processing data than the largest supercomputer in the world today. So in order for us to have AI supplant human and human reasoning and go into this super AI category, we have a long way to go.
So what happened? There was a chess experiment where they put a human being against a machine, and obviously the machine won fairly. I don't know.
Kasparov.
Yeah.
In 1997.
Okay. So what's the difference then between the machine being human at something like that and what you're saying? Is it because that was just a very narrow part of it, but when you combine all the different elements that humans do, senses, etc., is that kind of how you pitch a brain against a computer?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good point. And you're referencing to Kasparov, that was beaten by IBM's computer called Deep Blue in 97.
Right.
And that's the first time that a computer beat a grandmaster of chess. But that, believe it or not, is using the simplest form of AI. It's using this narrow AI technology, which is just algorithms. I mean, the computer was just processing more algorithms than what he could. But remember this, Super AI is where you could have emotions, synthetic reactions.
Okay.
You could reason for yourself. The computer needed the algorithms to beat Gary, right? The computer could not create those algorithms themselves. And that is the big gap between where we are between general AI, like ChatGPT, what OpenAI has created, narrow AI, which is what we're using in our simple everyday applications, and super AI, super artificial intelligence, which is the computer can now have a mind of its own. The computer has a conscious, right? That the computer can now think and reason and write its own algorithms. And that is the gap. That is what is far away.
Why are people like Elon Musk sort of waving the flag, say, look, we've got to be concerned about this? Is it because he's looking that far into the future, or is there anything more in the short term then that people are kind of worried about it? Or is it just more, what do you think he's worried?
Well, I think it's well-founded, and I don't think it's just Elon Musk. I think it's anyone who is really involved in the space and understands it. I mean, they are concerned about super intelligence. They're concerned about computers being able to reason and have more capabilities than the human brain, and they should. I think that is a good thing to be worried about. So the other good thing is that most people believe that it is 50 years is the lowest estimate, 100 years is what most people believe. So we've got a lot of time to figure out policies and structure to how do we kind of manage that kind of technology, because in the wrong hands, it could be pretty dangerous. I think he's aware because he's seen how fast things are developing. And he's, I believe that he has a right to be concerned along with others about the capabilities of that.
I suppose with and I'm going to sort of reel it back again, but as we're talking about this, with the Chat GPT, it's just amazing how many people now, particularly in business, just automatically use it for so many things. Yes. I was even chatting to a friend of mine, Nick, a few weeks ago. He's a graphic designer. He does video, imagery, and he showed me some of these presentations that he was doing, and with people. He does stuff in the fitness side, but he was actually creating. He said, "Oh, we don't need." He didn't need to do any photo shoots for this. He literally created these images of people and like these moving pictures and stuff just using AI. And like some of it was actually just, I was genuinely struggled to say that you didn't actually go and shoot some of this stuff. So what's the, well, there's two things, but first thing, how does AI work from an image perspective, like some of the graphic designers that are now using it? How does that work?
Yeah, so what you're touching into, again, it's part of the second, which is this general AI capability, and this is called generative AI. So generative AI is AI that could create something, whether in your case it is images or video. They can create content, and this is incredibly relevant today. You might have seen the writers' strike happening. They've had some clauses asking for protection around AI for their jobs. People are concerned that their jobs might be replaced. So there is a lot of truth to that. And the way that works is no similar than how an algorithm works in AI, in that it consumes big data. So you're feeding it all of these images, and based off of that, it could create a new image for you, right? And it doesn't even have to be an image. It could be a video. It could be a movie. It could be written content. But it's using this general AI capabilities to help do that, which is really interesting because it allows you to create, I guess, original content that is created by AI, but it's using references from the past. And I think that is where people are saying, well, if you're creating a new image from something that is my name, image, or likeness from the past, should I get credit for it? I mean, that's the debate that's happening today.
Kind of worms, doesn't it?
Yeah. But that's how they're creating something, right? So you might, see a movement of an exercise. I mean, this is, if you think about, over the last decade, companies have spent a lot of time creating movement, like filming exercise movement and exercise videos. I mean, I've been in some of them, and right now you don't really need to do that because you could use AI to create a lot of.
Yeah,
that.
it was phenomenal. Like I'm like. That you wouldn't have, and I like you, do lots of photos and videos all the time. I couldn't tell the difference between it. It was incredible. And I saw a thing I was in the gym the other day getting changed, and there was something on the TV, and there was this program I think it was in Mexico, and it's this kind of reality TV thing where they basically you've kind of got like boyfriend and girlfriend scenario, and what they do is they kind of get this video, and then with AI they create these scenarios where your boyfriend or your girlfriend is with someone else doing something, and the whole idea of the program is you have to say did it really happen or didn't it really happen? It was kind of this crazy idea for a program, but they were doing all this in AI, and you obviously it looked exactly like your boyfriend and girlfriend with someone else. You can't tell. It was a bit of a freaky show, but I guess the point I was trying to make is now you can actually almost create. I saw a Tom Cruise one as well where he was doing this weird commercial for something that he wasn't actually doing, but it looked exactly like him. So I guess that could be quite concerning, particularly when it comes to things like politics and all that. It's like, well, who am I watching, speaking, saying this, and is he really saying it, or is it something that someone's created?
Yeah, I think you have to have rules and compliance around that. I mean, it's no similar. It's a modern day plagiarism, if you really think about it, right? It's a modern day plagiarism, and plagiarism has been around for thousands of years. So I think by having rules and having tools to identify is this authentic or not, just like it's like copying a piece of art. How do you verify the authenticity of it? But
it's a lot more. It's almost like with us being in the very social, like everything we do is on the phone. You know, whether it's some form of social media channel, we're always looking to the news, and so it's almost like it gets into every element of your life. You're almost like, well, what is really
what is
anymore?
Real and what is not? That's a really good question. I mean, these are questions that we're going to have to answer. But I think, look, in the near term and where we are today in our lifetime, I think AI is the most transformational technology that we've come across outside of the mobile phone.
Yeah, it's so just to reel it back, because you can go in all kinds of directions here, can't you? So we've gone through the key concepts, 7 branches. You mentioned that there's different stages of adoption.
Yes.
Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely can. And different stages of adoption are important, because when you're thinking about how, as a person, as a business, how do you adopt AI within what you do? So there's really 5 stages that we typically implement, and this is something we do internally. The first is awareness. Do you have awareness either within your brand, within your company, within your mind of what the application of AI should be? The second is doing something that's active around it. So we call that, either in fitness, it could be an active task, whether it is the painting, the taking of an image, the creation of the content. What is the thing that you want to do with it, and what is the output? Then the third is putting in the operational principles around it. So in your case, you just talked about your friend Nick, and I think he was trying to generate exercise videos.
Yeah, well, he was doing a catalog with images, and then he was doing some video stuff to go with it. So it's things that you would normally do. You'd hire a videographer, a photographer, and you'd put together a campaign.
So that's the third piece. That's the operational piece. The fourth is systemic. So now that he's done that, what is he going to do with those images? He's going to put it in a catalog. And the fifth is the transformation. So now that he's done it one time, he's completed it, how do you repeat it? So there are 5 stages of how most people look to adopt AI and bring it into their business, into their art, into their craft. And that takes time. And the reason why it's important to break down into those 5 stages is because the tools that you're going to be using, I mean, I'm not sure what tool he used to generate that, might vary. So he might, I'll bring up one example. There's a tool called Jasper. You might have heard of Jasper. No. Okay, so Jasper's great for creating content. So if you are writing blogs, if you're writing articles, it can actually write it for you. So you should go try that out. It's pretty remarkable. So you might say, I want to write about the 5 stages of AI. And it will go ahead and create a complete article with references for you.
I did it just, we've got a new product, and Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon, I needed to put together quite a big campaign. And you sort of sit there with a piece of paper and you try and brainstorm some ideas. So I used one of these AI things, and I did a bunch of research online, and just to kind of give me some content, and instead of writing it in, I just loaded it in this thing, and then I gave it some structure, and it was just like mind blowing.
Right.
It was. I don't think I could have hired somebody to have pulled all that together that quickly. And then I kept breaking it down. Then it was like, okay, summarize it, do an intro paragraph, put it into 5 points, do a conclusion. Like, it did the whole thing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, just with a little bit of polishing, it's kind of ready to go. It was,
which is incredible, right? So what you just did is in that stage would be like systemic, but that's called an input engineer. So it's actually a new role that AI has created. Have you heard of the term input engineer? So
No.
It's actually a new job where people get really good at asking AI or
The
in
right
your case,
questions.
the right questions.
yeah.
So that is called an input engineer.
Wow.
And there are people who are now becoming experts at it.
I can imagine that, because someone told me and explained, like, you can say, write like a PR piece, or write like we do a bunch of YouTube stuff, so it's like, write a YouTube headline, and they kind of, you can change the style of the writing and everything, so I guess there's a lot, as you say, you can learn in terms of how to word the questions. And the better you get at wording, the better you get. Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing when you start thinking about it all, really, isn't it?
It really is. I think, generative AI, and those are all the points that you're hitting on, because it's going to have a broad impact on society. It's going to have a broad impact on how we work. Content creation, because you have social media and a lot of different channels, over the last decade has been a hard thing to do. I mean, even if you look at what we're doing today, creating content is not easy.
No.
So how can you lower the bar for that, or create even better content, improve the quality of it? AI is going to be a core part of that. And I think this is why, when you look at what's happening in the streaming industry today, where you've got all of these shows and the budgets are going to be coming down because they can't afford to continue to pump out shows at this rate. I think AI is going to play a critical role in that, where you're going to have better content, more tailored content that's personalized for you. I could see a world where you open up a Netflix show, you and I watch the same show, but the show is actually different because AI is changing the show. It's changing how we're consuming the show based
how
off
you
our
like
preferences.
your preferences,
That's right.
the avatars, the people that you happen to like, or it knows you like. Yeah, you can imagine that. It's like, okay, if you like blonde girls or whatever, it's like, okay, there's a blonde girl in this version.
That's right. That's correct. And that's incredible, but we're not far from that. I mean, that capability is here today. And as it relates to fitness, if you think about even classes, right? We're here at a Les Mills event, and people will be attracted or relate more to a particular trainer or an instructor.
Yeah.
Well, there's only so many humans that can do that. Now, you can't replace the best trainers with AI, but if you're at if you're at home, or if you're at a gym, and why wouldn't you generate a trainer who could guide you through a workout, guide you through a program, even on one of your screens, right? That people can relate to better. AI
So
can do that.
my guess is that one of the industries that's leading this is the kind of the what is it called, like the kind of sex industry. Like my guess is that's they generally lead it. Like what I suppose, and without kind of going totally off topic, but there must be some innovation that's coming from outside of the fitness space that's going to come into everything that's happening. Like, is that anything that you're aware of? We've kind of got your son sitting here.
Yeah, look, I think that industry has always been at the forefront of innovation.
Right, and
for
technology as well, I
decades.
guess.
I mean, even if you look at the conversion going back to VHS, from Betamax to VHS to DVDs, they were the first ones to adopt that.
Right.
They're the first ones to use sensory wearables and toys and all of that. I do think that a lot of innovation is going to happen from there. I do think that you're going to have other industries, that being one of them. I think the other one is in transportation, in reducing the risk of injuries and accidents. I think AI can play a big role there. But ultimately, to me, the biggest application is personalization.
Right.
That's really where AI is going to play a key role, is identifying each one of us as individuals, and then serving us the content, whether it is sex or fitness or mobility, whatever that might be, towards what we want and what's going to serve us the best. You can't get that, right? You can't get that from a human. So if you think about a fitness experience or another experience, knowing exactly what you want and delivering that to you is something that AI can do.
It makes me, you think about the music industry and how pop music is sort of, I'm into my music, and looking back at the 80s, you used to have these producers and they kind of figured out the formula, the riffs and the breaks and then it was, I think ABBA were probably the first. They probably did it themselves, but they kind of had the guys and the girls and the blonde, and then the type of music, and then if you think about how that evolved with the boy bands and where things are today, it's almost like what we've tried to do in the music industry is to, and then things like the Spice Girls is another example. They tried to have all these individual people and looks and that hit. An audience, and then they kind of serve this type of poppy music or something. But I think now with when you've kind of got like this AI, it almost does it on this thing on steroids. And I suppose the concern is, and that's what happens with pop music. It's like, well, is this really what I like, or is just someone kind of playing with me and getting these patterns that they know that are drawing me to it, and you've got this kind of like canned stuff, no creativity. And I suppose I imagine with this AI, they're going to understand what our emotions are even before we know them.
That's right.
Deliver these images, these sounds, even these scents and smells, I suppose. And you're almost like being totally, influenced to its highest level, isn't it?
It is.
Because, now we even go into the hotels and you've got scents and all that sort of stuff. It's just like you could just totally immerse everybody's senses.
You could. I mean, imagine walking down the hallway, coming in, and a hotel knowing exactly the type of fragrance that you like. But that's a game changer. It's going to put you in the right mood. So when you go in to check in, there might be a long line, but at least you'll be less upset than if you had the wrong scent coming in.
The lighting gets kind of put onto the right way. Your colors, if you're a red or a blue or yellow, or bang, your colors change.
Yeah, I mean, and look, just bringing it back to our industry. If you look at a lot of the reasons why people fail to stick with the program, right? You have a lot of 18% of new members at gyms sign in the New Year, New You campaigns. Most of those new members, the majority of them fall off the program in mid-February after 6 weeks. The majority of them fall off a program. And so the people that are consistent are roughly the 20 to 25% that make health and fitness a part of their lifestyle, because for whatever reason, we've programmed ourselves, we've trained ourselves through repetitive patterns to follow something, right? You have to do something roughly 300 times before it becomes a habit. But with AI, we could now say, let's give this new person who's coming into this for the first time something that relates to them. Let's help them crawl, walk, and then run. Let's not just have them run from day one. And imagine you have a new member coming into your gym. You know nothing about them. So you might pair them up with a trainer. You might ask them a couple of questions for onboarding. But imagine with AI, by having a few data points, so you know their background, maybe what neighborhood they live in, maybe you know their age, right, their fitness level, you could now predictively say, these are the steps you have to take, right? And we know friends like Ian with Keep Me, that's exactly what they're doing, right? Yeah. They're using predictive to improve retention. And there are real-world applications to help democratize fitness using AI. So I think the more immediate application of narrow AI, which is the most basic form of AI, could be transformational to the industry.
Yeah, I suppose those are the questions that I kind of get. Is almost like how do you get that delicate balance? And I'm sure as a society we're going to totally go in the wrong direction for a while until it pulls back. Look at what's happened with social media. Great idea. Before we knew it, it got a hold of us, and now everybody's obsessed. God knows what will happen to our children because it's just taken control of their lives. And I suppose with AI, that's likely to happen. I guess being in an industry, a people industry, where, previously people industry, where it's about you being healthy, body and mind, almost like how you can use some of this technology to do the stuff that maybe is important but not essential, but without necessarily doing away with the bits that you want to be able to focus more on. I suppose I see it in an opportunity to kind of have more of that good quality interaction. Take away some of the unnecessary stuff that you don't really, doesn't make sense for people to do, but then doubling down on some of the bits that do that are important, because I think it's quite easy, even within our business, I'm starting to see it's quite easy to sort of say, okay, look, we'll move all of that over to a machine, and then you end up with this kind of like canned stuff.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's emotionless, and if nothing else, it's like, okay, well, this isn't. You've not necessarily put the time into doing this. That's right. I suppose when you do put the time into it, okay, it's a little bit sort of kind of, it's not perfect and it's a little bit broken. But the AI thing that I did, it's almost like maybe I've missed going through this process myself. It's definitely helped me, and maybe it's shortcut and I did the whole thing in an afternoon instead of a few weeks. But then am I missing out on that sort of forced learning process that you have to go to think through ideas and evolve yourself to another level? Or have I just sort of skipped a level and I'm not really, I'm in a false place? It's like fast food.
Yeah. So I think there's a counter argument to that as well, which is that yes, it is going to help you accomplish a task sooner. So you did something in 4 hours that might have taken you a week to do, and you're skipping some steps, but you're using a tool. I think what you have to look at is, what does that afford you on the other side? What are the other experiences that you're going to gain? And it's like any other tool that we implement, right? If you think about even mobile phones, mobile internet, what computers have done, what applications have done, what apps have done for us over the last several decades, they've given us time back for a particular task, but then opened us up towards new skills. And I'm looking at AI in that same way. So even if you think about your fitness goals or your wellness goals, I think it will help you achieve a better quality of life, but supplemented with a real person. So if you think about personal trainers, I don't think personal trainers or these coaches are obsolete. I don't think they're going to go away. I think, in fact, they're more valuable than ever. But now they're going to have more tools at their disposal. So instead of working out with you for 3 months to really understand where your strengths and weaknesses are, well, AI could help inform that a lot better, which is going to help you reach your goals sooner, which should help you stick with your program longer.
Yeah, I suppose your evaluation stage, sometimes it can take, so many bits of information you need to learn from someone to help them. I suppose having a sort of 60-second evaluation where you've got everything and it's feed it out and it creates a dashboard of key things to look at in order of priority. Yeah, I suppose that could be really beneficial. It's how do you then get your head around this? Because from a business perspective, and I've got a few different examples which we've touched on, but when looking at this, how do you look at it, and how do you advise people to sort of look at this and say, all right, look, we've got this super powerful technology. It can do so many things in so many different areas. Some of them could be great. Some of them are not great. Some of them are relevant now. Some of them are relevant in 2 or 3 years' time. How do you kind of pull all that together, the different concepts and the different branches and the different stage of adoption, and start to put it into some form of hierarchy where you can say, all right, well, look, I'm gonna start looking, thinking, studying about this one, and the next step would be this one and this one. How do you put all that together and think about it in a logical way?
Well, one of the first things to understand, and we talked about this over the meal last night, consumers are evolving. Consumers are changing for all the things that we've been talking about today. Computers, mobile phones, social media, like our children have a much different perspective and access to information than we've had generating content. So like the type of consumer that you have today is very different than what a lot of brands, unfortunately, were initially built to serve. And AI is going to be a key tool in doing that, and here's why. If you think about a consumer today, they are less connected to a brand and more connected to personalities or people that they can relate to. And because of AI, because of social media, you don't just have 50 key celebrities, but you might have thousands of influencers and people that someone's going to gravitate towards because they find them more interesting, they're more attracted to them, they could resonate or relate to them much better. So if you are a brand, if you are a business that typically serves a product, like if it's a gym or studio, that is your offering, how do you personalize that? And how do you attract and retain that customer? In the past, broad-based marketing would work. You could just send out an email and say, I have a discount and have a special. Go do that. We then got smarter about marketing, right? We now had something called segmentation, where we would now segment what we would send to you. So we'd know that, okay, well, if you dropped out of the checkout funnel here, then we're going to send you this discount. We're going to try to win you back. We have these win-back strategies. That's been around for the last 10, 15 years. Well, that's not going to work anymore with the new generation. You need to personalize it even further. You have to get into what is meaningful to them in order to attract, retain, and keep people engaged. So in business, in the real sense, if you want to win and keep your customer, which is getting increasingly harder to do, AI is going to be a key part of that. Here's the other thing. If you think about what we call CAC, right, the cost of acquisition of a customer is constantly increasing over time. When you and I were kids, we used to watch Saturday morning cartoons and see our ads for Frosted Pebbles or like Cocoa Pebbles, Frosted Flakes, all that, right? We had cartoons and characters that we related to. We were attracted to toys that might have been in our cereal boxes, and that said, "Hey, mom, dad, go buy us this." I mean, kids have progressed a lot more from that today. So you had TV ads. Then when you grew up, you had ads in magazines, and that's how we consumed content, was through magazine ads. That then went online, and then you would see ads online, which then went to social media, and then you had paid ads come to social media. Well, now because you have so many data points, that's being pulled back because they can collect less on you. So as a business, you need to get closer to your customer. How do you do that? You do that by engaging more with them, learning more about them, collecting data from them for you, and then using AI to keep them, right? So this whole idea of the consumer life cycle, the whole idea of acquisition, of how you acquire a customer, how you engage a customer, how you retain that customer over time, has evolved faster than any other period in commerce. I would argue faster than any other period in the thousands of years in what we've had commerce. So if a business doesn't understand or embrace AI, using it as a tool, as you've been doing, I think they won't be relevant anymore because the younger generation, Generation Z, and the ones that are behind it, have less affinity to these strong name brands and more affinity to people and personalization. So you need to get there quickly. If not, you'll be obsolete.
Personalization has been talked about for a long time, and I guess what technology's done. Well, if you look at the history, even in something as simple as retail, you kind of went from small shops to big stores to the sort of Walmarts of the world, and then the Amazons came and took that whole thing to another level. They're almost like the global version of a Walmart, and you've got the same on the technologies like the Apple. So it's kind of like this one player takes all in many cases because technology is allowed to happen, and that seems to have been this phase that we've gone through. But I'd be interested in your thoughts, because I guess now, as you say, the younger people are not quite as associated with the brands as they used to be. It's people, and it seems as though knowing more information about a person becomes more important. Certainly in the fitness industry, we're still very much of the biggest chains in the world are probably 10%. It's like the sort of 90-10 or 80-20, where 10 or 20% of the industry is made up by just a few small players. Right. Even now, even though the sort of boutiques came and shifted that a little bit, it's still very much like that. Do you feel that over time, whether it's in the fitness industry and other industries, that there's going to be this sort of tip where it's got almost like as big as what it can do, and even with some of the technology, this personalization gets to a limit where now it will become a narrowing down? Because I guess even a small niche, if you've got a small niche globally, it's still a big market that probably you weren't able to do before technology. So do you see that there's more of these sort of smaller specialized slices that will almost be the anti-big corporate brand? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, a couple of things there. One, most people don't know this, but Amazon is the second most popular search engine in the world after Google. Wow. So people go to Amazon that frequently, and every search you execute on Amazon, they're collecting data from you, and they're surfacing you now their own products, right? Saying, I know you wanted to get this shirt or this shoe, but let me give you my own deal. So there's that. Walmart continues to be a strong player in retail. They're the largest retailer in the world, and I think they've been nimble, they've innovated, and they're offering more services. They've become that third place. AI, I believe, is going to be transformational for the fitness industry. I think it is scratching the surface and is actually going to help physical locations grow, not be a challenge. I don't think we've reached the plateau. I don't think we've reached the peak. I think AI is going to open up more facilities and more demand, and here's why. We're seeing a transformation in healthcare right now. And the healthcare industry understands that typically the healthcare industry has been built on this idea of treating your symptom, right? Of not really treating the cause. The fitness industry and wellness industry is focused on preventative care, on really focusing you on things so you don't get to the hospital. You've had another change in the office where return to office, we know today for the knowledge worker is by all purposes not happening. New York City has the highest vacancy rates that it's had in about 3 decades. San Francisco is going through the same thing. So all these big cities are now grappling with the fact that you've got empty buildings, right? And you could build a beautiful new building like the Hudson Yards, and they have nearly a 70% vacancy rate currently now. So you see these changes happening. What that means is that this third place, or even the second place for most people, is going to be their gym. So I think, movie theaters are going down in numbers, even though Barbie and Oppenheimer just had a fantastic weekend. The movie industry is going down because people would rather consume that content at home. But I think when it comes to health and wellness, people strive for the connection. They strive for community. And I think the gym's going to be the third place, and more people, as they are working from home, as they're consuming content from home, as they're not doing things, as they're buying more from Amazon, less on the retail experience, they're going to be looking for that next place. It's going to be the gym. So gyms are starting their growth right now. So we have about, I mentioned this number, 25% penetration in the United States. I could see that number growing significantly because gyms are going to start becoming the central hubs for work, for play, for community, for even healthcare. You've seen some gyms do this. I mean, about a mile away from where I live in Arlington, Virginia, Lifetime just opened up a brand new facility 2 weeks ago that has a co-working space in it, right? So it's got a beautiful new gym that has a spa service, that has a restaurant, and now has a co-working space. There's another gym called Midtown in Chicago, offers a lot of those same things. So I think the gym is going to have an integral role to play. I don't think it's going to be limited to just these big name brands like a Lifetime. I think you could see successes with mid-market or smaller brands because they're going to be closer to you. They're going to be focused on personalization. They're going to be closer in the community. So I think AI is going to usher a new era of growth for physical fitness facilities like we have never seen before.
That's the bit I was thinking of is, at the moment we're in an industry that's still in many cases, not all, but many cases, still struggling to kind of, get over what's happened. It's still a tough time out there. That's for sure. And so you could sort of say, well, the future looks bleak, although the sort of long-term view of more people getting involved in fitness seems to be strong. So if you look at the sort of macro trends, it's good, but it's like, how do you sort of get from where we are to where we're going? And I suppose this personalization using things like AI, whether that's, let's use Amazon because it's a better way to sort of explain what I'm thinking. Like the thing, I use Amazon all the time. I use it more than anyone in my family. I'm kind of addicted to the Prime situation. I just buy stuff that I don't need because it's just so easy. I can get things, and I just spend so much money on that. I buy things that my wife used to buy now because I can just get it in the same day.
Right.
I just like that. I'm addicted to that experience of it being there in a few hours. So that's great, but on other sides, it's not great. And as I've used it a lot, I start to see a lot of gaps in certain things that I kind of like. There's some things I think it can do well, but there's other things where you can't replace that sort of experience of seeing like a small boutique shop that does something, whether it's I don't know, like whether it's we were getting some candles and some of these like scented sticks things, and we kind of got them, and you can't get that from Amazon.
Yeah.
And we got all this, we've had loads of things that we brought, and not that we've sent it back because it's not easy to send it back, but you just keep it. And I guess that there must be lots of examples of whether it's supplements. Like I wanted to switch from a brand I was using, try something else. And I've had a number of them and I've tried them. The taste isn't quite good. And so some things are actually more difficult to go by that. And it's like, if you want to change something like, whether it's a supplement or a vitamin or anything, then it's like, well, where do you then go to get the recommendations? Who do you speak to? So you then end up, for me, I'll go and talk to my community, friends of friends, etc. And you go out and you learn stuff. And then you can kind of get a brand and it's like, oh, it's not on Amazon. And so I see this shift of, I think your popular stuff, and Amazon is an example, but I'm sure there's lots of other things that we could think of. I think your popular stuff, I think that will continue to dominate. But I think if you can really understand and personalize the client or who you're working with, we'll use the health and fitness example, and their specific needs, I think there's a real big opportunity to create some very, compete with a lot of these big brands, to create some great business opportunities. Because of that personalization, that recommendation, that understanding people, that although Amazon does know a lot about me, there's limits to what it can really know. And some of it, even if the algorithm serves it up to me, it's like, well, I want to go and figure it out myself a little bit,
Well,
what do you think?
One, not all AI is created equal. And what you've really touched on is this concept of discovery, which has been an art, right? I'm going to go to a store, I'm going to sample a protein powder. I'm going to see, and we used to do that, right? You go to a store, hey, can I try this? Sure, I have a sample for you. Do you remember the sample packs that you used to get? Yeah. And in a lot of cases, when you walk into a vitamin shop or a GNC or your local supplement store, those sample packs that you got ultimately led to a purchase, right? So what is that new sample pack today? Like, we don't really have it. I would argue that new sample pack is in this personalization. It's in this AI that's coming in. So it's important when you are a consumer and you're thinking about a brand like an Amazon to understand that what Amazon can serve you and give you is limited to what they know. Now, Amazon tends to know a lot.
Well, yeah, they own Whole Foods where they do that stuff, actually thinking about it.
Right. But Amazon can do a lot, or any brand that you work with can do a lot. But again, AI and personalization is only as good as the inputs that they have. So if they don't have a new protein brand that's on there, they're not going to serve that recommendation for you. So I think as a consumer, it's important to know that, well, I'm getting a personalized experience. This is ideal for me. No, and this is where brand value really comes in. So a brand cannot be an expert on everything. So I think you're going to see big brands try to offer you more, but I think you'll see the birth of a lot of entrepreneurs coming out with more smaller, focused brands that are really going to be even personalized further to you. So that, to me, is the future. Is I know it seems like now we're in this shift. We're going from small brands to now focus on these bigger brands because of the pandemic, and I think just a macroeconomic environment. But I do think we're going to revert back to specialists and smaller brands that are going to help you personalize and get to know you. And then they're going to implement AI models as a tool so that they could then help you achieve your goals more quickly than they could by themselves.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that as well in food. The message that I'm sort of working on here is just this kind of like, I think the small independent entrepreneur, whatever they are, there's a really great opportunity, I think, in the future for that, just by being able to use information. I suppose even supply chain, like I mentioned that here, I guess understanding your supply chain, being able to share information about your supply chain, and Amazon don't do that. It's very difficult for them to even understand the difference between fake and non-fake products. Many people that sell for Amazon will understand this as well. So do you see things, in the world, in the supply chain sector regarding AI and efficiencies and how small brands can compete on that side of things?
Yeah, I do. One, AI could be used, and Amazon is using its own AI that is constantly evolving. So I do think over time, they'll be able to recognize forgeries and things that are not authentic, right? So I definitely think AI is going to help in processing efficiencies. It's going to help in identifying you goods. It's going to help you creating product, and that's really it. So when you think about, we talk about content that is being generated through AI, whether it is a photo, whether it is a video, but what if we can create an actual product that is personalized for you? It could be a protein powder that is customized for you. So you could place an order from Amazon with the brand that you like, but the protein that you get is different than the one that I get. I think ultimately that is where supply chain is going. We see some of that personalization happening today. There are brands, supplement brands today that we work with that personalize the output for you. Not using AI, it's using more of a basic business logic formula. But I think the next phase of that is, yes, getting a meal, like getting a meal served even at a restaurant, or ordering a supplement that is specific to you, that is dialed in for your preferences. That's where we're going.
The relevance to Amazon that I was trying to get on is this David and Goliath situation. It can be so difficult, in terms of our business and many people that I know. It can be so daunting and difficult nowadays because these big companies just have so much power. It's almost like, can I ever get anywhere? And I guess in the David and Goliath way, can AI provide the little guy unusual sort of opportunities to make a big difference because of what this technology provides now?
Absolutely. AI can be a superpower and can really help the little guy punch above their weight in a very big way. So if you think about Amazon only knows how you're interacting with it, which is a lot, by the way. They know your buying preferences, they know how much you like to spend, they know what you like to buy, all of those things. But if you think about the smaller business, especially one in our industry that's focused on health and wellness, Amazon doesn't know when you like to work out. They don't know what gyms you go to. They don't know your workout preferences. They know none of that. So the little guy can really use AI to compete in a very big way against some of these big tech companies out there, which I believe are focused more on the general application of AI. So you've got an opportunity for the little guy to collect data points, which the big people don't have at all. So with that, it presents an immense opportunity, which is why I think that the physical industry of fitness and wellness is at its infancy right now, and AI is going to usher this new era of growth.
Right, and we were talking about a previous podcast I did the other week, where like ladies' gyms and real, I guess, relatively small niche that not a lot of people are doing at the moment, and some of the sort of real specifics about training and nutrition and cycles around the year and month and that kind of thing. So I suppose using this and going super deep on a subject, are those, like if someone wanted to kind of be an extremely strong, dominant niche, is that what they would be looking at, is to say, okay, how can we take this one area and just break it down and go like really, really deep and almost like be super experts on it?
That's right. Area. And there's a big market for that. If you think about, well, look, women's health and fitness is obviously half of the world. It's a massive market, but you could go even more specific around that to see, prenatal, postnatal, menopause, and be specialists around that particular area. AI can really help accelerate how that development happens. And that's something that a big brand like an Amazon or Apple or Google are just not going to do. So I think that presents a new opportunity, but it also talks about the way entrepreneurs need to start thinking, which is you need to get deeper. You have to go a few levels deeper than you typically had to achieve success in order to be relevant in the future.
With that point, like if you think of that, like with the food industry as one example, there's a ton of waste which is in that supply chain. We overorder, the sophistication of understanding what people want and what they don't want and getting that to the end person at the right time in the right quantity is almost impossible, which creates a huge amount of wastage. And however you look at things, you're either paying for that or it's doing a lot of damage and harm to whether you're an environmentalist or whatever. But there's a lot of things that probably don't make sense on that. I suppose if you're a small restaurant, being able to kind of optimize that whole process
and plan for that. You're hitting on a lot of great applications of AI today. So I think, again, really the next decade for us is going to see those platforms get developed to really help us say, okay, how much should we really serve in this? How much is being wasted out of this, right? But it takes input. So look, if you're a small business, start to collect data, as much data as you can. Using that wastage example, well, how many what amount of food gets wasted at the end of the night? And so just throw it in the garbage. Start tabulating that. It is a little bit more work, but understand that the work that you put now is going to pay dividends for you later. And even coming back to our own industry and the businesses that work in fitness, get data on your customer, right? Just making a product and just selling it out to a gym and not knowing how the product's being used and and what they're doing with it, I don't think is no longer going to suffice. So you need to get closer to your customer. If you can't today, try to find ways to do that. So it might be working with your distributor, it might be working with your installer, or the multifamily housing, wherever that is. But I think the key is start to get to know your consumer better, because it's going to inform what kind of products you need to build in the future.
And where with collecting that data, because it sounds like getting that input will be critical to be able to utilize it. Like how are some easy ways for us to be doing that in the background for when we're ready to sort of put this AI, into figuring out what it means? Like what are some of the sort of common ways that we can do it, particularly in the, I suppose, fitness space, whether you're an operator or a manufacturer?
So I think the first thing I'd look at in our space, whether you're in fitness, healthcare, wellness, right, is understand your locality and government. There are regulations are very dynamic. They're changing right now in the US. Typically every June, we've got a whole new set of regulations that are being passed. So one, make sure that you're covered there. So before you start collecting data, do your homework, make sure that you're updating your terms and conditions, that your customers are aware in how you're collecting data, what it's being used for, and how they can access it or delete it if they need to do that. So I always like to say that's the first basis. The second is identifying, again, how you want to collect it, whether it is a form, whether it is to tracking, whether it is through a mobile app. That's the second one. How do you want to collect that data, right? How do you want to get that? And the third one is, what are you collecting? Do you want to know about what they're doing with your particular product, which is interesting, and I think a baseline? Are you interested in other things that they're doing as well? So if it's a mobile app, they might, you might know that, hey, they're using my bike as an example. But if you connect with Apple Health, you'll also find out that they are running or doing strength programs or everything else that they're doing outside of it as well. So collect that data, bring it in, use it as a way to help personalize the experience for your customer. Even though you might not have that capability today, I always say that don't collect everything for no reason. Understand why you're collecting it, collect it, store it, know that it can be useful in the future.
And then once you've got that data, then you can put programs together or algorithms to be able to then present or find different solutions. Because I guess that's the challenge, is not necessarily at the moment knowing we don't know what we don't know. But if we've got that history of information to go back and look at it, you can then, I suppose, figure things out when maybe you're ready to do something with it. Right. It almost seems so soon. It's like, okay, well, how do I apply this? What do I do it? I can see then if we do come up with an idea to say, all right, this is a problem we want to solve, and then if you can look back historically and
that's right. This goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of the pod, which is how do you classify the data? How do you filter the data? How do you build a machine learning algorithm around it? Agreed. So what you're going to find is collect the data now. You might not have platforms in place today, but know that 6 months, a year from now, there are going to be platforms that are coming out. These softwares are being developed at a pretty rapid pace, and they're going to say, great, what inputs do we have? And you can point them to a data warehouse where you've been collecting all this consumer data. We walk into applications today, and I'm learning, and this is kudos to a lot of the brands that we work with, where they're saying, hey, we want to build a personalized experience for our member. Perfect. I said, what kind of data do you have? They said, we've actually been collecting data for the last 3 years, and here's where it sits. Fantastic. So now we could take that, put that through a learning model, and an AI application that might have taken 6 months can now be done in less than 3 months because that brand has been collecting data on their consumers. Right. And then we could then use that to help inform recommendations, to create a custom homepage, to even things that working with one brand to customize how to schedule instructors, when to schedule instructors. Like, when do you put an instructor on the schedule that's going to be, who's going to be utilized the most and is going to serve their members the best, right? So is this instructor best served in a 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. class? We're using AI to help us inform that.
Right. Final question then, like if there was one thing that you or maybe anyone is listening would sort of narrow down and just spend some more time learning within this, it's a very big category of AI. You know, we've spent an hour or so talking about it now, and we could continue most of the day exploring different opportunities. But if we had to narrow something down, like one big takeaway is try and collect as much data as you want, as relevant as you can kind of get your head around at the moment, because when you are ready, that's going to be useful at some point going forward if you want to build a product or something. What would be another thing to sort of say, like, narrow down on this for the future? You see this being something that's probably going to change what we're all doing from a business perspective. Is there anything else that you can think of that are worth us paying time to learn more about?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of things. The first thing I would say is don't be afraid of it. Understand that it's a tool that you need to embrace and you need to learn. If not, your competitors are going to overshoot you. The second is look internally at your team and identify, do you have the right people in here? I often talk about this is don't look at your product or offering based off of what you think is right. Make sure that you have the right people in the room to serve your customer. And the final thing is make sure you have the skill set in-house, right? Make sure that you're either partnering with the right platforms, the right agencies, the right companies, or have that person in-house who could really understand how can this help your business and help your customers.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mo. Another great learning from me. Certainly lots to think about. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on again, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.